Now on economics and economic wins. At the beginning of last year, Mr. President, the CBO projected that the U.S. economy would reach a growth rate of about 3.5% by the end of 2021. The International Monetary Fund had a rosier outlook. They said economic growth could be closer to 4%. The Federal Open Market Committee was perhaps the most optimistic, forecasting a growth rate of about 4.3%. They were all wrong. The U.S. economy shattered most expectations and grew at the amazing rate of 5.7%, the strongest rate since the time of Ronald Reagan. And, Mr. President, this was no accident. Far from it. Last year's historic turnaround is a reminder that the right leadership in government matters. Democrats promised in 2020 to fix Donald Trump's utter mismanagement of the COVID crisis and get our country back on track. And a year later, after securing the strongest growth rate in decades, Democrats are delivering on that promise. After Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, I said, help is on the way. And that help is getting America back on a path to normal. And though we still are learning to live with the virus, our economy, our communities, and our schools are better off because of vaccines, because of testing, and because of targeted legislation we passed last year, like the Restaurants Act and Save Our Stages. And I want to stress an important point that is forgotten too often. We are finally seeing wages go up at a significant rate. That's dollars in the working people's pockets. For decades, economists have decried the lack of wage growth in America. It's been reported that from 2000 to 2020, if you were in the bottom 75% of Americans, the majority, your wage growth was not real at all. In other words, costs ate up all of the wage growth, and the wage growth was paltry in many years, 0%, 1%, 2%, declining in some. Lack of wage growth has been the scourge of our economy for so long, as it affects average working folks, closing opportunities for millions of hardworking people who've worked harder and harder only to see their lives deteriorate. Now we're finally seeing signs that wages are going up, and that's going to stay for years to come. This is real progress for working families. As we keep fighting to lower costs, we Democrats are going to do everything we can to see that this large wage growth remains and continues, and that will mean better lives for the American people. We know the work is not done. We know we must keep working to help Americans lower costs so they can better afford the basics, from health care and prescription drugs to daily essentials like groceries, to the costs of higher education. Addressing these issues remains our focus. We also must address strained and broken supply chains. Later this week, the House will take up the long-awaited USICA bill by passing a companion, the America Competes Act. I've been working very hard to make sure that this happens. Once conferenced, this legislation would bring manufacturing back to America. Instead of sending jobs overseas, this bill will say, buy America, keep the jobs here. We saw what just happened in Ohio in the Advent. Thousands and thousands of new jobs in manufacturing. So this legislation is going to bring manufacturing back to America, bring jobs over here, good-paying jobs back here. It would strengthen domestic supply chains and thus reduce our costs, and in particular help our country address its semiconductor shortage, a driver of rising costs in so many different things, from cars to cell phones to everything. Finally, all this is a reminder of what Democrats at our core stand for. Building ladders of opportunity for working Americans to get to the middle class, and providing stability to those already in the middle class so they can stay there and thrive. And wages going up is a large part of that. and this administration's record on wage increases we haven't seen in decades. We still have more work to do to bring our country out of the rubble of COVID so that we can look confidently into the future. But the growth of last year showed we are well on our way, and Democrats will keep working to help working people, working families, middle-class families, poorer families trying to get to the middle class, have the kind of prosperity and help they need and deserve. Senate business, appropriations, nominations. On a separate matter, we Senate Democrats will continue to work with our Republican and House counterparts on the vital task of passing an omnibus package to fund the federal government, avoid a shutdown, and assure that government effectively serves the American people. This morning, I will meet with Democratic appropriators to discuss the state of negotiations as we work towards the omnibus. I'll be meeting with Speaker Pelosi in that meeting as well. Later today, the four corner appropriators, Chairman Leahy, Ranking Member Shelby, Chairwoman DeLauro, Ranking Member Granger, will also meet to continue their talks. We need to have an omnibus fund the government. That is the goal we're working towards, and I want to thank my colleagues for their diligence and their leadership.